Okay, so this is going to be the start of actually 7 days that will elapse. So by the end of this video, we'll be looking at this 7 days later. But recently I opened up my first ever Pilot Kakuno. Believe it or not, I had never actually had one or used one. And I was really impressed with how well it wrote. So that gave me the idea of also picking up a couple of the Platinum Preppy, which would be the Platinum equivalent of the Kakuno essentially. And for a week, only using entry-level pins, being the Kakuno and the Preppy. So I was going to start this a while back, but with using cartridges, as these pins come, just in my initial playing around with the Kakuno, I wrote through half of a cartridge within a couple of days. So I had to kind of regroup, and I decided to add an additional couple of Kakunos and a couple of colors of the Platinum Preppies, as well as pick up some refill cartridges so that during the week I'm able to continue writing once the cartridges are written down. So let's take a look at what all we're going to have for this 7 days of only using entry-level fountain pens. So to start on the left here, we have a clear Kakuno in extra fine, and I actually have two of those. And then I picked up one in fine as well. And the reason for that is when we get to the Preppies, they come in two different nib sizes as well. They're just notated in a different way. So that way it's a little bit more side-by-side comparison. Now, that being said, I don't envision this being a which one is better. I think from everything I've heard, both of these are going to be wonderful performers for like an entry-level pen. It's going to be more of how do I find to use these for all of my writing for a week, be it in my plotters, my planners, for work, for personal, for journaling. These 6 pens will be the limit of what I use. So I also picked up a box of blue and black cartridges, and that's why I have 2 of these extra fine of the clear. One is going to have a blue cartridge and one will have a black cartridge. And then I think I'm going to do the black in the fine one. So over to the Platinum side, I picked up 3, and let's see. So let me hold these over to the side camera so you can see exactly what I'm talking about. So on the tip sizes, the way Platinum denotes kind of extra fine or fine is a number system of an 03 or an 05. So I think the 05 is honestly a little bit more medium, is my understanding. I don't think there's an 04. So that way I'll have a thicker, and that's why if I do a black cartridge in the 05, it will be a little bit more side-to-side comparison-esque with the fine Kakuno. But originally I was just going to do as well blue and black, but then I realized I don't want to limit myself. I want to do this experiment. I think it'll be fun. But it was only an extra $6 to pick up a green Preppy as well, just to have that little bit of variation to be able to annotate stuff a little bit differently and not limit myself in terms of colors at the expense of this week-long experiment. So let's get started by getting all these inked up. And what I'll do is I'll just open up one of these Kakunos and kind of show how it goes, put a cartridge in one of the Preppies, and I'll do the others off camera, and then kind of just go through the setup of how this will be for the week. And this sticker is fighting me here. So let me grab some scissors. It's always interesting when you're opening something on camera. It seems to fight a lot more than if you were doing it off camera. Okay, so here's the pen. I'm going to leave that black cartridge in there since I'm going to be putting blue in this one. And then set this off to the side for now. So we'll get out a blue cartridge here. Now, Pilot and Platinum do have their own proprietary cartridge sizes. So that's one thing to keep in mind if you're getting into these entry-level pens, is that you can't just buy one box and use it across Preppies or Pilots. They do have their own individual size. And let me actually just pull one out of these here, and I can show those side by side. So you can see here They've got a different type of end on them. The platinum one has this metal, well, get in the camera there. The platinum one has the metal ball, and then the pilot one just has kind of this opening like this. So, but if you're not familiar with cartridges, and these are capable of using converters, but I thought that might be a little bit more challenging for this type of, approach of someone who's new to fountain pens, buying the entry level pen. How would they go about using it? So that was my theory in this. So you just kind of press the cartridge in there, and then you'll hold it up to the writing position, and it'll feed ink down into the feed and whatnot. And I'll do that here in a minute once I get the cartridges put in these others. And we'll do an initial kind of writing just to show what these pens are capable of once I have ink coming down on all the feeds. And then what I plan to do is over this next week, just grab little clips here and there of using these pens and how it's going. If there's anything, that goes on that's unexpected, I can record that as well. So you can see for the Preppy as well, you just kind of push that in there with a little bit of force. And then you can screw on the back. And these are both pull caps. So you can just pull the caps off. So quick for writing. So let me get the cartridges put in the others and get this other Kakuno opened up. And then I'll come back and we'll do a little bit of initial writing and just kind of give a layout of how the rest of this week will look. And so I'll see you here in a moment. Okay, so I got all of the cartridges, put in all the pens. And before I do the writing, I just wanted to show, in case you're not familiar with the Kakuno, it does come in the package with a little guide. So if you're brand new to pens, just has some pictures showing how to insert the cartridge. This is supposed to be a true entry-level experience. And they kind of give, documentation along that. And the other thing about a Kakuno is, if you're not familiar, on the nibs, you can see this is the extra fine. It's got a little face with the tongue sticking out. And it does mark the size on there. And then on the fine nib, it has a little face. Where's it going to show best? Well, there we go. It's got a little winky face on the fine nib. So just a nice little thing. This is kind of a starter. I believe in Japan, this would be something that school children would use to start out. But, you shouldn't necessarily view that as a negative, because, you'd want someone to start learning on a decent tool of any sort. And I think these would qualify. So what I'm going to be doing for writing is, this is my Bible-sized plotter, and I have a couple of sheets of Earful dot grid in here. So I'm just going to start and leave this in the front during this to kind of note on, like, if I have to do cartridges or things like that. So I'll just write what pen it is, and then I'll show this up close on the camera. But to start, we got the Kakuno. And this is an extra fine. And I'll put the color first. Okay, and then we've got the Kakuno with the black ink in extra fine. And then we have the Kakuno also with black ink with the fine nib. So this will be the first kind of side-by-side comparison to show the difference in line width. Now, with these being Japanese nibs, they're going to be finer than German nibs, like a Lamy or something like that equivalency. So keep that in mind. If you write larger, you might not prefer the Japanese nibs. You might want to go for something like a Lamy, but I find with my writing, the smaller nibs seem to work better for me. So let's get on to the Preppies here. So we'll start with the Preppy Blue. And for the sizes here, because they use the number system, I'm going to do it with the number. Just to have, so it matches with what it is on the pen. Do the black. And you can see there already that that's a much thicker line. And once I hold this over to the side camera, you'll definitely see what a difference that is in terms of line width. And then the, last but not least, the Preppy with the green. Okay, so let me just turn this over to the camera here, and hopefully I can get it held up in such a way that we can get a good view of these writing samples. There we go. So you can see when looking at the, the extra fine, it's a true extra fine, even on these kind of entry-level Kakunos. And then the fine, it's not a huge jump, but it's enough to make a difference. And then in terms of the Preppy, you can see the 0.3, it's almost more of a fine now that I'm looking at it when comparing. And then that 0.5 is more of a medium. So, when I'm doing different writing, I'll keep that in mind. Because like I said, this isn't meant to be which one's better than the other. I think they're all going to be great. It's just a matter of how I want to use them with this limited set of options versus my normal rotation of grabbing different pens in different colors and different inks for use in all sorts of different scenario. I might use blue for one thing in my work notes, or black, or for journal, I just kind of grab whichever one seems to be the appealing one at the time. So I'll have a little bit of a limited option set here, but I think this will be a fun experiment. So like I said, over this next week, I'm start filming this on a Sunday. So it'll be a Sunday to probably do the wrap up next Sunday, and then it would release after that. This will be my pen selection of choice between these 6 pens, and using it for writing. And like I said, I'll do some little clips that you'll see next in terms of the video throughout the week, as if I have to change cartridges, how much writing I was able to do, how long it took before I might have to change something out. And the only caveat is I did not buy any extra cartridges for the green Preppy, but since it's going to be kind of a special case annotation, I don't anticipate running out of that one, but there's always a chance. The good thing is, if worst comes to worst, I could always just kind of flush that out with a little bit of water and put a blue or black cartridge in there, since I have a box of each, and continue having just the full 6-pin rotation. Okay, so I finally wrote through a cartridge. Now, the original Kakuno that I was using that kind of gave me the idea to do this video, I had already written about half of the cartridge down, so this was the one I expected to be running into an issue with, and I did buy cartridges for others just in case. But I just wanted to quickly show what's involved with a cartridge change like this, if this was your only pen, as part of this sticking to the inexpensive kind of starter methodology. So let me switch over to the other camera here, and I'll show these are just the Pilot Namiki black cartridges, the same thing that comes with the Kakuno itself. So all I'm going to do is grab one of these cartridges out of here, if I can get the box to participate correctly. So we'll just grab a cartridge out, get the box just set aside. So all that's involved in doing this, and I'll try and do it where it shows up well enough on this second camera, is you can leave the, pull the cap, unscrew, and I'm going to hold it over this paper. I don't expect any splatter. And you can see in there the cartridge is written down. Now the pen will still write at the moment because there's still ink in the feed. And that's part of why switching to the same ink, or to the same kind of cartridge in a pen like this, is beneficial, because you don't have to prime it. So all you do, and I'm going to switch back to the top camera, I think here, now that I kind of showed that up close, all you're doing is kind of grabbing and hold it upright to get it loose. And actually, say upright, hold the nib upright. So if you twist it off, now you have the 2 pieces with the entry cartridge. Just put that off in the trash. Take your new cartridge, put it in there, and then as when you first open this up, you push in until it kind of pops through that seal. can screw back on your pen, and this should immediately write. Like I said, because there's still ink in the feed. So that's the process for changing out a cartridge on any of these pens in this week-long test. So just wanted to show that. So let's get on to the rest of the video. So here we are with 7 days past of only using these 6 pens with a little bit of a caveat. On the Saturday, second to last day of my 7-day week, I was gifted a 0.2 millimeter Preppy, which I think I mentioned in the initial opening. It's more of a true extra fine, so it was a better comparison point to the Kakunos. And, I enjoyed using the others, but the 0.2 I think would be my preferred size for how I write and preferring extra fine nibs. That was nice to have that to use for a little bit. I got a page of A5 written with it just to have a good comparison point. And I did end up preferring the 0.2 to the 0.3, but the 0.3, the 0.5, and the Kakunos, and both extra fine and fine, they all wrote great. Okay, so just to give a recap through the week, I recorded clips of writing with these. Every so often I have my cameras mounted on my desk where I could just turn it on and, show using it. I have some journaling clips. I have some writing things down in my plotter clip. I'll have those up on the screen as I'm talking through this just a little bit, just to show that, I literally wanted to stick to this challenge as best as I could, and I completed it without using any other pens. And even on my wife and I will go to like the coffee shop on the weekends in the afternoon, and do some writing. Either, she might be working on one of her books. That's when I normally take a time to do journaling for the week. So I even got a clip at the Starbucks with, my phone as the camera just to show using them there. And that was when I was really getting a chance to put the 0.2 Preppy to use as well. So, fun experiment. And I look to do, I'm considering possibly doing more of these in the future. So I use this for every bit of writing, everything in my plotter, my Bible size, my A5, all my writing was done with these. And the general consensus that I came to is these pens write better than they should for the price. I'd never used these pens before, and now that I have, it's shocking how inexpensive someone could get into the hobby and have a great writing experience. I use it across different papers, and and even just going back to using cartridges. I was never really much of a cartridge user because, you get into the pens, you're like, oh, I got to use converters. I need to use bottled ink. That just seems like what is common, where it was actually kind of nice just being able to pop a new cartridge in. When I wrote the black one dry, as you saw me refilling earlier in this video, I've got plenty of cartridges now to be able to continue to use, because honestly, I think these Kakunos might become my go-to pens that I just kind of leave in my sling bag, or in the, this 0.2 Preppy, since I got it, has been living in the Bible size plotter. It fits in the loop. The Kakuno fits as well, but the Preppy seems to fit a little bit better. It's a slightly smaller diameter. So I think that's just going to kind of become my go-to pen in there, because it lets me carry a fountain pen, and it's easy to swap out cartridges if needed. So I can just carry a spare cartridge and be good to go. So all that being said, don't be afraid to use entry-level pens. If you've never used them, like I was in that predicament, go out and pick one up. Preppies are like $6 or $7. And there's even the special edition Preppy now that have the art on them that are, I think, like $13 or $14. But then you get the cool designs. I think they're called the Preppy Wah. I'll put a link to those in the video description. I know the Gentleman Stationer has some of those, and Finesse and other retailers as well. But, like I said, don't be afraid to go pick up an entry-level pen. They write great. They perform well. You can put converters in these if you want to, so you're not stuck with using cartridges. So if there's an ink that you want to try and you're not certain how well it's going to do, I'd much rather put it in something like a $6 Preppy. And, if I think the ink might cause some sort of issue, than a more expensive maker pen or something like that. So if, these would also be a good way just to try different things out in terms of inks or consistency or mixing inks, or, if you think an ink is going to perform in some odd way, try it in a Preppy. But, I think at this point, I would say everybody in the fountain pen hobby should have at least one Kakuno, one Preppy in their repertoire and continue using them, because this, in a way, this was a nice little like week of detox of sorts. Only using, I had 3 ink colors, so less decision paralysis, I guess you'd call it, of what pen to use. And even just the color and how everything went down, like in my plotter calendar for this week, I mean, the ink wasn't showing through on pages, so I'm not having to deal with show through. So I wasn't not hampered in any way by using these pens. So that was also great to see, is that, you would think, oh, it's going to be a lesser writing experience because they're inexpensive, where it was kind of the opposite. It makes you really think of how you might purchase pens in the future, where you can get great pens like this. And, if someone sees me writing with a Preppy, I can just hand it to them and not feel bad. That might be their first fountain pen, and then they're going to go off and look into the hobby some more. And it's a great way. You're not starting someone out at a disadvantage by offering them any of these pens, because they're going to be a great writer. So if you like this kind of video, leave me a comment and let me know, are there any other kind of challenge type things that you might want to see, like only using a certain color of ink for a week or something like that? This was a fun experiment that it has ideas going through my head of other things like this that I might be able to do, like only using a rollerball for a week, only using pencils for a week, or something like that. So if any of that sounds interesting, leave me a comment and let me know, and I'll see if there's something else I can cook up for a video in the future. All that being said, go out and pick up a Preppy or a Kakuno if you don't have one, and I'll catch you on the next video.